What if the most powerful thing you could do for your clients isn't to consult with them or coach them, but to mentor them? Find out why on today's episode of the Consulting Matters podcast. And welcome to the Consulting Matters podcast. This is the show for transformational consultants and coaches who are ready to own the power of their partnership and position themselves for greater impact and income. I'm your host, Betsy Jordan, and perhaps you noticed that there was a little bit of a shift to my show promise, and that was intentional. It is all because of this amazing conversation that I had with Joe Pine on my last episode. So he's the author of The Transformation Economy, and he really opened my eyes to really what I do and why. I definitely want to help consultants and coaches who are purpose driven, who are really in it for reasons beyond the money. But really, that's not the whole deal. I'm really all about helping transformational consultants and coaches, the ones who want to guide their clients to achieve their aspirations and become the person, the leader, the business owner, whoever it is that they are striving to become, and to be that one who comes alongside those clients who are in the middle of this heroic journey of transformation. So if the client is the hero, then who are we? I'll tell you who we are. We are the mentors. And that's exactly what today's episode is all about. So I was thinking a lot about this episode that I had with Joe Pine when I was at this OD networking event. And then I heard other people at the event talking about this guy, Yogi Mueller, and his book, The Great Slapping, which, by the way, what a great title. I knew I had to have him on the show from that standpoint, but also because he's an expert in mentoring. So I hope you tune in to really understand and appreciate this mentor role that we could have with our clients, how we could ignite more mentorships in our organizations that we are supporting. And of course, if we are looking for mentors, what we should be looking for. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Yogi.
Betsy, this has been a goal since the first moment I saw you had a podcast. So when I got the call, I am humbled and excited to be on your red carpet today. Really am.
So what's so fun though is you and I have like lots of crossovers. So I definitely want to get into your background and I want to get into your business and how you got into mentoring and how you became an expert in that area. And I want to know all of that. But just selfishly, I want to get clarity on where did we overlap? Because I saw as I was getting ready for this episode, I think we overlapped when I was at Disney, and then I also did work at Wyndham, and I think you were at Wyndham when I did my work at Wyndham. Is that
I was.
accurate?
Yeah, just I think barely there. I was at Disney from about 1998 to about 2007. So we were right in that world. I spent I started as a frontline merchandise host. I had to earn my ears, as they said. Then spent 2 years in human resources at Downtown Disney at that time, and then went into MAC team operations at Epcot for 5 years. Then moved into the training sphere during the WorkBrain project. I was on the training team, which was great because they took us back and forth to Disneyland. And then I ended my 10 years there as a manager of the Youth Education Series program, where we used the theme park as classrooms for high schoolers or middle schoolers. So it was, I think in 10 years, I worked 9 different jobs, it seemed like. But I think our
So
past, because I spent a lot of time at DU, I spent a lot of time at the Disney University working with those individuals. And we know we've shared space in a conference room somewhere in those 10 years.
and I'm gonna find that out. I'm gonna go look it up on my computer to see if, like, your name is somewhere. It's so weird. It's like Disney's so big, like, we literally were there at the same time, but in very different orbits. Like, I wasn't at the DU at the Disney University. I was in Team Disney,
You were with
and feature
Chris, right?
animation.
Wasn't Chris running the OD team at that time? Was it?
Oh, yeah. Chris
Yeah,
King is amazing. Yeah.
yeah.
Like, I owe my career to Chris King. And I at some point, I absolutely have to have him on the show because of what I learned from him. But then you and I crossed over. So you were at Disney, and then I think you went to, like, Blue Green and then Wyndham. So it seems like you stayed in the theme park hospitality world.
Well,
Is that accurate?
I took a hiatus to help launch a master's program at Full Sail University for 3 years. And
Oh, okay.
I missed hospitality. I absolutely missed being in an industry that served others outside of, the education world. So I had an opportunity to join Wyndham at that time in their learning and development department, be a teacher and an educator and developer, but yet have my foot back in, hospitality. And about 2.5 years later, I was stolen by Blue Green until, as I say, Hilton freed me up to pursue my entrepreneurial dreams with a recent acquisition.
Well, that was gonna be my next question is about what got you to business ownership, and I love that you said it tongue in cheek because there's a lot of people who feel like, "Oh my gosh, I got here because I feel bad I got laid off." I feel like 9 times out of 10, people wind up on this path because something happened to them that, like, it was like a layoff or something like that where they're like, "No, I wanna have control over my career. I'm not gonna go back and be at the mercy of an organization." So tell us a little bit more about that. So you went from Disney to, launching a program at Full Sail,
Wholesale
then you went to
with
Wyndham,
them
Bl then Blue Green,
for 13 years, right. And, I
then
always say
Hilton?
Hilton, yeah. So I say, Orlando is the biggest, smallest town you'll ever work in. Hospitality is even smaller than that, and the timeshare world is even smaller than that, right? So, this wasn't a surprise because I knew all the players over there. I knew the org structure, and they didn't have room for a VP. And just wasn't in the mix. And so it wasn't like it was like, oh, by the way, can you stop at HR at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon? Surprise. It was pretty telegraphed for a while. And I didn't get my notice until 6 months after the takeover happened. So literally the story I love to tell is I had my office packed, ready to go on day one, and the call didn't come for 6 months. So I mean, there's reasons for everything. I'm a firm believer in the cosmos. And learn a great deal being there in that 6 month period of time. And then when I got the call, I'm like, well, I'm not going to sit on the couch and eat bonbons. So I hung up a shingle. I wrote a book. I tried to do things to stay valid and engaged, and still learning and developing myself. And that was the process. So I was blessed in the fact that it wasn't one of those shocks that I know a lot of people are dealing with right now. And my heart and soul and head goes out to them in that experience. So I eased into it a little bit. I mourned earlier than I had to, and so
Mhm.
when it did come, it was easier to digest.
It feels like in today's day that it everybody should be prepared, in some form or fashion. Like, it doesn't seems like you read the tea leaves, but I think that the world is different, like, that there isn't a world anymore where you can go to a company and for the most part, unless something weird happens, that there's not gonna be layoffs. Like, that seems to be this is the way it is. Mergers and acquisitions and growth that way, like, this is life right now. So it's almost like that would be the advice I would draw from what you just said is always be prepared.
I was young and naive, really, for a long time. My father worked for a steel mill. He was head of the IT department there, and he worked for a company for 4 years. And a year before he retired, it got bought out, and he like lost 90% of his pension because of that.
Oh my gosh.
And we're Gen Xers, right? So we were brought up with loyalty to a company. We were brought up with that gold watch, at 25 years or whatever. And now if anybody stays with a company, it's 3 years and they get a gold watch, right? So I think people's shift has moved on from that, but it took me a little bit. At Disney, I expected to be at Disney for life. And I was on a lot of temporary assignments, we called them TAs,
Mhm.
and, where you're gainfully employed for 8 months, and then all of a sudden, you're like, you have to look for a job again. And I had a lot of people say, "Oh, call me," and then phones never rang. So my mind was like, "I'd like to know you're gonna have a paycheck in 9 months." So, wouldn't trade my Disney experience for anything in the world. I learned so much, gained so many great friends and mentors and leaders, and, but I learned that loyalty is no longer a currency anymore in an
Mhm.
organization. And that, if I tell my students, nobody cares more about your career than you do, it was about time I started listening to my own, wisdom and putting myself first. And that was a hard lesson because I'm somebody that if I work for you, I give 150%
Right.
always. And so I always told people this last year and a half or so have been very cathartic. I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about my weaknesses, my opportunities, and have grown. At 55, I'm still growing, and I think that's a good thing.
And I feel like that, like in the work I do around personal branding, and And a lot of the stuff that I observe as an ex-OD consultant, when I think about, like, the advice I give to my daughter, who's 22 in the workplace, and it's like, you do good work because it's about your reputation. Like, at this point, like, there's no guarantee that you're gonna have a job forever, but the one thing that you can control is how you show up, what your reputation is, and doing great work, and you do great work because that is what, like, buys you options. And so I think that that's, like, if I had it all my way in terms of, like, how to think about, like, employee engagement, if you will, is it's, like, get everybody to kinda be empowered for themselves, like, own my brand, own my reputation, do good work because it will pay off for me later.
Yeah, and when we live in the world's biggest, smallest town, you never burn a bridge ever
No.
in this town because you never know who you're gonna be working for or with in the future.
So let's talk about what your business is now. So you went through, you got a little bit of push out of the nest, and then you decided to be much more intentional in terms of like staying relevant, learning, and growing. What did you land on as it relates to your consulting business? Is it related to hospitality still, or is it something different?
That's funny. I saw this opportunity that I was given to maybe do something other than hospitality. I'd literally spent the last 3 decades in various forms of hospitality, and though I do miss it and very passionate about it, I was like, "Okay, let me do something else." So, that would have been an easy kind of connection for me, but I chose to go in more in that leadership world that I had spent the last 20 something years, specifically in my work, and, I in writing the book, I wanted to do that homage to my mentors and to my mentees, and that became my tentpole, but I gotta tell you, Betsy, that and you probably know this for working with new people in the industry, just continuous moments of reinvention and understanding
Mhm.
what's working and what's not, and you open this door, doesn't work, you find another one and open up, and so, am I do I have a lot of messaging? Yes. Is it all focused as best as it could be? No. I yell at a lot of people, I said, I've been wanting to fire my chief marketing officer since day one, of being an entrepreneur, and, because, again, that's one of those areas that we talk about mentorship. We both remember the Good Network, and I had Kevin McCarthy as a mentor. I mean, you can't ask for a better person to hold your hand, when you're beginning this process, and he slapped me several times as during this process. So, um, right now, I'm at a point where I I I've been called a human potential locksmith. So I use that because of my approach. It's very personal, but it's very direct, not a lot of fluff. And, I focus very much on unlocking you when it comes to either you as an individual or your team. How self-aware are you? How willing are you to listen and do something with feedback? And so, whether that's through mentorship, whether that's through the grit index, whether that's through, really having frank conversations and being very direct, um, that's kind of where I am right now. And whether that puts me at a conference of managers, if it puts me in a one-on-one situation over a whiskey, or on a keynote stage, I'm at home in any one of those three areas.
And the whiskey is important because that's part of your brand name is craft. You have craft. It's not craft beer. What's your business name? Is craft
But craft leadership,
strat
craft
craft leadership. So is what's the relevance with the whiskey beer scenario?
That's a
And
really good question, and that's exactly what it's based on. I have a fondness for craft cocktails. Did a little tiki thing for a while there too. During COVID, my girls, I have 2 daughters, both amazing girls. One's, 26, the other one is, 22, graduating from, college in a month. And, when they were home for the longest spring break ever during COVID, they said, Dad, when people come over to the house, and especially the young people, you educate them on how to not sound like an idiot when they order a drink, and that they understand what spirits are, and how to order them and how to drink it and how not to look like an idiot. They said, "You should do a YouTube channel." And I said, "Okay." So my daughters and I founded the Bar Dad YouTube channel. And for the longest time, my youngest shot it, my oldest edited it, and I they have about 45 episodes, I think, covering everything from, how to tip your bartenders to how they drank during the Civil War, George Washington's eggnog recipe. And that kinda led me into this loving the craft, the intricacy, the bespoke kind of approach and watching these scientists behind, build these cocktails, and I'm like, "You know what? When you're dealing with somebody's potential, when you're unlocking somebody's thing that's either unwilling or unable to see their true ability, sometimes you have to get in there like that scientist, like that craft cocktail thing, and you really have to be very delicate but direct and very specific and very individualized to the situation. So that's where the word craft leadership came in.
I love that you are infusing so much of your personality, in your
I got a
business.
lot of it.
And and even in your book, so I wanna move to the Great Slapping book, which
Yes.
is a funny title in itself, and it's a book about mentorship, which is like, okay. Um, but I just wanna just affirm that standpoint is like you really bring you into your business, and you let your personality shine. And I think that really emphasizes like one a key thing that I believe that even leads to our conversation about mentoring is, people don't really buy our methodologies, they don't buy our knowledge, they buy ourselves. Like we are the agent of change, and who we are or how we show up, like we are it. We are the instrument. Maybe ultimately what we sell is their transformation and what the client gets on the other end, but the mechanism is not what we know, it's who we are. And I love that you're bringing you into it because that's what they're getting. And they're getting what you just said, like your no fluff, your customization, your love of the craft. In this world, it's like the love of the craft of leadership, and so there's that love of that, and it's like bringing out the best in them. That's what they're buying. They're not buying. Maybe you have a grit framework, or maybe you have like certain ideas that you represent in your book, but it's not about the ideas. It's about you. That's what I'm getting out of this conversation or this segment of the conversation.
Well, no, I really appreciate that. The best compliments I get about my book is when I read it, I hear your voice talking to me. And that because that was very important to me. I can't talk about authentic experiences of being a mentee or being a mentor and come across as fake, come across as disingenuous. I think there are two people from a business perspective or two things that have really shaped who I am and what my why is right now. The first one is Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you haven't read it, shame on you. I try to introduce that to all my students, and he says, look, he says the power of connecting with anybody comes from you being genuinely interested in that person.
Mm.
Because anything less than a genuine interest in helping this person achieve whatever they want to achieve, whether it's ego, whether it's a task, whatever it is, you come across as a used car salesman. I apologize for any of the used car salesmen out there, but you come across as disingenuous. So that was a big compass point for me. That book changed my life. And then I came across one of my favorite quotes of all time, and I think it's attributed to Nelson Henderson. That's in it's happiness is planting a seed of a tree whose shade you will never enjoy, or
Mm.
something to that effect. And I'm like, wow, yeah, yeah, that's it. That's it. That's my purpose on this rock is to try to make people better when I leave them than when I found them. And to not expect anything in return, but the knowledge that I potentially had something to do literally gets me up every morning. So, that's my driver, that's my fuel for doing what I do.
It sounds like a lot of what you do is you wanna show up as somebody who's invested in the success of somebody else, and I think that
Yes.
that's a different type of thing versus, like, I'm here to get a transaction, let's, like, do the contract. 'Cause I hate when people talk about, like, landing consulting or coaching clients as, like, sales, like, I always bristle against it. I'm like, "I don't do sales, I do partnership setup." Is that because it's not a transaction, it's not like you buy these number of sessions and you buy that, in exchange for this amount of money. It's my partnership and coming alongside you on your journey, and I'm invested in your success. Like I'm here because I'm invested. And I think that's a different value proposition if you are looking at, I don't know where this is going to go, and I don't have any attachment to where this is going to go, because the where we go is not my monkeys, not my circus. Like, that's your deal, but I'm going to be here to provide that support along the way.
That was something that I wrestled with personally. Putting a fee structure around something that I would have done for free
Yeah.
because that's who I am, right? And then, when and so yes, I've read books, I've watched videos, I've listened to very intelligent people like you kind of straighten my head in this business, for all the right reasons. But that was a struggle for me because I saw myself as providing a service for the benefit of man in general, mankind, and not
Mhm.
for me. And to say, "Yeah, I'm gonna plant that seed, but here's my invoice." It played with my psyche for a while to get
Yeah.
over that, and I'm assuming you've run into people just like that too, kinda get them over that hump for all the good reasons they have it, but it's something they need to kinda unlearn.
Well, I'd say if you are in a zone where you do it for free, then you're in the zone of probably what you should be doing, because, there's like, to me, there's like the should to ought to business, and then there's the I'm in the flow business. So if you hit the place where you're in flow, that's a good place to be. And then the fact that you have to like caution yourself. Like, I do this all the time, even in my own pricing, because I'm like, I think I've been like staying at a certain level for a certain period of time. And it's like, and it's not really about like how much money I'm making. I think that the whole idea around the fee is that they're investing in themselves via me. And so if I don't charge properly, then they're not really invested in the process to the way that they should be. So even if I wind up with somebody where I have an energy exchange with somebody who's helping me with something that I don't know how to do, and I'm helping them with their brand messaging and positioning. So it's like we kind of have this energy exchange, but I literally put something in the system in my system and said, "All right, so in exchange for your help with this, I'm doing this. This is the
Wow.
equitable value. Go ahead and sign up." Because if she didn't sign up, then I don't know she would take the homework I would give seriously, or the direction. And I don't want to be somebody who's just like giving away my time where it's not invested. So for me, the getting over the pricing is, I'm invested in your success, but I can't be more invested in your success than you're invested in your own success.
Well, that's
And
what I said,
that's where
yeah.
the energy sh that's where the oh, you said that. Oh, we gotta get
Well,
to the book. We've been talking for like 20 minutes and we haven't
no,
even
it's
gotten
okay,
to the book yet.
but, just in the in the mentor book, Great Slapping, mentees have to bring at least 51% minimum
Exactly.
to the relationship. I'm not gonna chase them down. So, you're
Yeah.
applying that same concept to the consulting world. Perfect.
So so let's talk about the mentoring, book. Alright, so there's 2 parts that I have curiosity about. Is I love the title, and I understand the gist of the title, but I want you to explain the gist of the title. But I really wanna understand what got you to be interested, of all topics, for you to pursue for a book. What is it about mentoring that's interesting for you?
I think it's the journey, it's the arc, that I have been privileged to see in folks that I've worked with in the past, to see when they realize that potential. I like the phrase that mentors are not satisfied with who you are today because they can see who you can be tomorrow.
Mhm.
And then when that individual is in that moment, you're like, "That's awesome." You know, People say, "How did you get involved in L&D?" I said, "Well, I was a professional comedian for years." And somebody said, "Go teach this class." And the first thing I thought of was, I got 40 people in a captive audience to entertain them for 40 minutes. And then I realized, "Oh my God, I can have impact. I can open eyes. I can, change lives potentially." And so that's my romantic entry into the industry I'm in. But, I don't mentorship for the onus or the impetus behind the book was gratitude. I think, when you're put in situations like a lot of us have been with the green banners and things like that on LinkedIn, in order for me to not spiral, one of the anchors is just gratitude, to understand the blessings you do have, the gifts that you have been given, the impact that you make. And it was originally kind of a thank you. I said, I want to talk to people that changed my life, that gave me
Mm.
that great slapping, that woke me up from being some stupid kid in college to where I am today. And in that, I wanted to also talk about gratitude for my mentees to allow me to give back. And that's kind of where it came from, that sense of gratitude. Yeah, there was a lot of work I did with gratitude after that decision was made and I was let go, for lack of a better term. And it's cathartic.
I think it is cathartic to go back and look and say, "What brought me, to this place?" Last year, I went on a sabbatical, so I went on a couple two cross country moves in 2 years, and I was like, "Cash," when I moved back here, and so I went on a sabbatical, like a 7-month sabbatical, and during that time, I got really connected to, even though I do brand positioning and messaging, and I could look like I'm in the marketing world, at my heart, I have 30 years experience in organization development, like, that's my home base, and everything that I do around positioning doesn't come out of marketing, it comes out of, like, the what I learn. And I had several people, so I had Peter Block on my so as soon as I got out of my sabbatical, I had Peter Block on the show, and then I had, Jack Phillips, who kinda gave me my philosophical understanding of consulting, but then I had Rick Baumelsje, who's a professor at Rollins, who was my first mentor. And he gave me the life-changing advice that has completely changed my trajectory, and he told me early on when I had actually an OD role in my organization, but I was not leveraged for this big change that was going on. And he told me this, like, little nugget. He said, "Nobody's ever gonna use your expertise the way you want. It's up to you to position yourself for the work that you want and the role that you want." And that is, like, defined everything that
Mm,
made me successful as a
mm.
consultant, and that's everything behind what I do now in what I help my clients do, and it all came from him, and, like, he was on the show, and it's like, I couldn't help but cry. It was like, I don't know what I would have been if you didn't give me that one bit of wisdom at that particular moment. Like, that was the information, and it changed everything. Like, I would not be a brand positioning person. Like, I'm a positioning person first, and messaging. People hire me because they like my ability to put thoughts into words, but I do positioning. Why do I do positioning? Is because Rick told me that you will never ever get to the clients and the opportunities that you want if you wait for them to invite you to the table.
Mm.
You have to make those situations, and it's like that was the mentor moment. And I understand what you're talking about with gratitude because it was really meaningful for me to come out of this long sabbatical and to honor these people. And that's why I'm like, I want Chris King on the show because he's another big pillar. And it is important, I think, to express gratitude to everybody who came before you and all the people who were invested in your success.
And I'm glad you had a moment to share that with them and that you will with Chris as well to let them know because if you think about those impactful moments that you've had with individuals and then I've gotten feedback that I've had this impact on others, that your interaction in your mind was just passing. But yet there was something about the connection, the truth that you shared, the awakening that you gave this other individual that literally changed their lives. And 20 years later, I've run into people, did you realize you did this? No. Wow. And it comes when you need it the most. So I'm glad you had that opportunity to share that with them because they may not know how
Mhm.
important you were to where you are today.
And that would be like a reflection moment for those who are listening. Like this could be that moment of like just thinking about like who is it that has contributed to where you are today? And more specifically, how did they contribute to your success or what you've gotten to? And then the follow up is like, well, what can you do to, either pay it backwards and pay it forward? So thank them and then pay that information forward.
Oh, 100%. When the moment you realize you're not where you are, that you're at you where you are because of the help of other people, then you're willing to give back. If you think you got to your seat without the help of other people, you're not necessarily willing to give back.
And nobody's gotten to where we are on our own. Like, that's just not even logical, but, we could be like, "I'm a self-made person." It's like, "Really? I
Really?
don't know." "Okay."
Tell your mom that.
"Yeah, you. Yeah, tell your mom that."
We'll see how individual you really are, right?
I'd love to move the conversation from the accidental mentor to the intentional mentor. And I want to kind of share a perspective that I had about mentoring, which I think is like what sparked my attention when people were talking about what your book and you that made me like, we should have connected anyway. I can't believe I've been back for over a year and you and I have not connected. So
Uh-huh.
that was just, bad, we should have connected. But what got my attention is, and I brought out my little toys here.
Ah,
I've so I've always seen the role of a consultant and coach through the lens of the heroic journey. And I think that the word mentor is part of the heroic journey because it came out of the Odyssey and the original role of the
a
mentor.
mentor.
And so
Yeah.
like what struck in my head about the great slapping and in connection with mentors is so you have Simba and Simba's on his journey of transformation. And it's like we all pay attention to the kings, the sovereigns, the queens, like who are those, but we always disregard this person. Like this is that other role that I think is a sacred role that I think consultants and coaches can play, which is the mentor. The people who have been where they are and can show them the way, or the definition of the word mentor, which is like about mind, where they can hold out a potential for someone until they could believe it for themselves. But like, would Simba have ever gone back to take his place at Pride Rock? You'll get to play with my toys. My daughter would be so thrilled. Would Simba ever make it up Pride Rock if Rafiki didn't bonk him on the head? Like, bonk him on the head at the appropriate time. It's like past hurt. I'll stop playing with my toys. If you
No,
guys are like,
have all
but
the
look at
fun
how
in the
cute my
world.
toys are.
But brilliant, brilliant connection. I mean, honestly, when you talk about a manifestation of a physical great slapping, that scene between Simba and Rafiki is brilliant. When you really break down that relationship, and you hit on something that I hadn't really thought about before, but you said, Simba's royalty and Simba's high up in the organization, as they say, and Rafiki is not. Rafiki is not in the royal family, but he's trusted. And I break down the two very important aspects of mentorship is trust, that I trust that your feedback to me, your slappings are coming from a place of genuine interest in building me up. And so I'm not gonna push back. I'm gonna listen. And the mentor trusts that the mentee will hear and heed what they have to say. Sometimes it requires a verbal or physical slapping to get them to wake up. And the other one is the willingness to be in that relationship. If nobody comes voluntarily, then it's not going to work. And so you think of the Simba and Rafiki, there was a huge level of trust, even though it had a 15-year gap or whatever it is in between. That relationship never stopped being what it was. And Rafiki sought him and Simba sought him out because the trust was there and they voluntarily trusted each other to give the best information. And Rafiki slapped the king. And there were no titles, there were no positions, there were no structures in reporting. Those all went away. It was pure trust and pure investment at that moment. And so, one of the things that if somebody asked me to coach a senior leader or a C-suite, my first question is, how self-aware are they? Because if you don't get past that, nothing's sticking, right? And so
Right.
the fact that you brought up Simba was royalty, I was first time I really understood that, and great connection. Thank you for that, by the way.
I think that you can go beyond this, even that, like, because I think in our world, like, we're obsessed with leadership. Like, how many books are there about leadership? And then how many books about
Great.
consulting, are all about, like, build a business, but nobody's really talking about what is the role in the office of consultant and coach. And the reason why I think Rafiki could speak with power is he was not a part of the system. He was on the outside. And I think consultants and coaches like wind up in this place like, oh, I don't have positional authority. Where's my source of authority? And it's like your source of authority is your objectivity. You're outside the system. You don't have a dog in the hunt. The lead if you were in the executives kind of world somewhere, even if you were an internal consultant, you won't have the authority that you're not going to be trusted because the reason why Rafiki's trusted is he has no dog in this hunt. He only wants what's best for the kingdom. And so he can speak truth at a equal level is the power is equitable because Rafiki's not going to act like this, direct report. Like Zazu couldn't be a mentor. Zazu couldn't have done what Simba needed because he was like below him. And even when Mufasa was alive, he could speak to Simba in a different sort of way, but Rafiki can because he can come alongside him. And I think that we miss out. That's why I wanted to explore with you the differences between the accidental mentor. Somebody has a great word of wisdom at the exact right point in time that makes a difference. And then the intentional mentor, the one who chooses to come alongside somebody else's journey of transformation and be there, at that important moment, like the Obi-Wan to Luke. Obi-Wan is in the same energy as Rafiki is, or Glinda is in the same energy. Like they're all in the same energy. And I think that this is where a lot of why I call my podcast Consulting Matters is we have a sacred role. Like we're not just these people who just got kicked off of the corporate ladder and we decided to take our careers into our own hands. Like we have a role, and I think our role is the mentoring role. This is what we do. This is the essence of what we do. When you talk about, unlocking this potential, like it's like that's the essence of this intentional mentor role of coming alongside somebody on their heroic journey. All right, so I'll let you comment on all of
No,
this. Maybe it's
yeah.
resonating, maybe it's not.
No, great stuff. The first thing that popped in my head was, and we both talked about how we're both parents, that you can't tell your kids anything. You tell them A, B, C, and D, and they're gonna like whatever. But a teacher at school or somebody else tells them A, B, C, and they think it's the most brilliant thing they've ever heard, and you're like, oh, glad I didn't think about that, right? And so the word that popped in my head, Betsy, was obligation. If you're in an organization, you have an obligation to the organization, potentially first, then the leader. But if you're in a true intentional mentorship relationship, your obligation is that individual. There are no
Mhm.
other things. There are no other. You're a parent. That's why they said you're a parent to your kids, not a friend, because if you do that separation, then you're able to make decisions and calls and interact with that child in an appropriate way. If you become their friend, that blurs lines because your obligations change. And I think if you bouillabaisse mentorship, it's that concept of why are you in this relationship? What is your
Mhm.
obligation? Is it to you? Is it to your fees? Is it to your, what is that thing? I think you can be a great coach and a mentor, but you can also be a great coach and not a mentor. I think
Yes.
there is some divisions there that make it I to my mind, they're clear, but you ask me to articulate it, I might not be able to do it so well.
I think that a coach so I think that there's a difference between a consultant, a coach, and a mentor. You could be a consultant who coaches, a coach who consults. You could be a consultant who coaches and mentors, but it all is like understanding like what's the role in the office that I'm playing at that moment. And I think where the line is different is like a mentor provides guidance out of a lived experience and wisdom. It's not like I just ask you questions and, coaching is like I ask you questions and I believe all the insight is in you. Like to me, like I deliberately call myself a business mentor because I want to take that office. And it's like I'm gonna guide you out of my lived wisdom, and I'll knock you aside the head. A coach was not gonna knock you outside the head. But
Right.
I will be pushing you. Like, I'll tell people all the time, like, when we were contracting, like, "You'll tell me what you want, and I won't forget it. And I'm gonna keep pushing you to get to your highest potential. If you told me you want X, we're gonna go for X." But if I were a coach, I couldn't do that, because that's not the coaching methodology, or even a consultant, because a consultant's just giving, it's a different kind of relationship. But a mentor, to me, comes from this office, this spiritual role of that you could choose to walk into that is different. And it's like it's partially out of my lived wisdom. The like what Obi-Wan has to share with Luke about the following the way of the Force, or even Yoda as the subsequent mentor, is that it's out of their experience of years and years and years and years and years of in the trenches. And so like this wisdom doesn't comes from the book knowledge or the head. It doesn't even come from the heart. It comes from your whole body.
100%. And I go back to sports coaches as well, and some of them transcend into being mentors for the students, and others just stay a coach.
Yeah.
Because if, they're pushing somebody to have a better team, or are you pushing some of this to be a better person, to be a better, version of themselves. There's a gray lines, but you can't if you're genuinely in one of those three areas that you're talking about, and you're generally there to support and develop others, you can't go wrong. There's no wrong direction there. And not being able to put a moniker on it is not gonna destroy the impact that you're having.
Well, it can go wrong because, Darth Vader didn't work out so well for, Obi-Wan. So, you know, there are times there are times that your mentees do not always
Zen and the
follow
art of
your
the lightsaber duel, yes.
you
Uh,
know, like like Obi-Wan would probably say like, I think we're gonna hold your
well,
craft
okay.
beer for a second. Hold your craft beer."
He Obi-Wan did say, "If you strike me down, I will be more powerful than you could ever imagine."
No, I'm talking about
So
when Anakin the earlier part,
oh, the earlier one. Oh.
When Anakin was the mentee who turned into Darth Vader, it did not work out so well. You're saying it can't not go well?
Well,
Sometimes it doesn't go well
but if
in
you
terms
look
of
at
the mentee doesn't follow through or
if
goes to the dark side.
there you are. Because if you look at the requirements, you look at the trust, he started to not trust his mentor, right? He was kind of thrusted in, he didn't ask to be a Jedi apprentice. He was thrusted into that. So there was a lack of volunteerism and the 51%. He didn't bring the 51% to want to be a better Jedi. And so those three things automatically point that it was a mentorship relationship doomed to fail.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe that we're using Star Wars to analyze the
We're such
qualities.
nerds.
This is the best. We're using The Lion King and Star Wars. Can we deconstruct the different types of mentors? Like, there's the Obi-Wan who just pops up and then just disappears, and then there's, like, in the trenches mentor like Yoda who's on literally on the back of his neck, and, like, there's that kind of mentor.
Well, I'm gonna start humming the theme song, but you might run into copyright, infringement on that, so I won't do it, but
Well, I would I don't know, I was watching Shrinking, and there was, like, a scene where they had the Indiana Jones theme song, so I keep having that in my mind, so if you override it with the Star Wars, my brain's gonna be like, "Okay, which
butter
mega
beware.
blockbuster?" So,
Great.
let's talk about, before we leave off of, like, us being mentors, I want us to more talk more explicitly around how do you do the great slapping, and how do you create the conditions where the great slaps are gonna be received?
Well, I definitely need a preface. I was on a guest on a podcast, and the first question is, "Why'd you pick such a violent name for your book?" That's a good way to start it. Um, there you go. I don't advocate physical violence in any way, no matter how much they might deserve it, right? So that's the disclaimer. The great slapping is those moments where, just like a physical slap, there's gonna be pain, and it's gonna hurt your ego. It's gonna take you down. You're gonna feel like you were cut out at the knees. And then there's that moment of clarity where you slap clarity, where you kinda wake up a little bit and your eyes open and you see things from new perspectives. And I recounted some areas in my life where that happened to me, where somebody who, there's this guy, I don't remember his name, God bless him, but I remember he gave me a verbal lashing because he's like, "What are you doing? You're screwing up. This is not going to help you be a better person." And I remembered that, and mostly remembered how I felt. My wife picked me up, or girlfriend at that time, and I was like, I was destroyed. But that guy changed my life. That guy woke me up, and it was like a slap. And so, the beloved Kevin McCarthy, I didn't know what I was gonna name the book, but I described what that really was. I said, "It's like a great slapping." So, "Why don't you call it the great slapping?" Boom, the heavens opened up, and I'm like, "What a great idea," you know? Um, what
It's
needs to
catchy.
change? Yeah, it is, it is. It either people think it's like some sort of like somebody said they thought it was like a murder mystery book or something that they're not into that genre, they didn't pick it up. I'm like, "Oh, things you learn,
I
right?"
I thought of it from, like, that How I Met Your Mother TV show where they had a slap bet, and so, like, I have that in my mind too. I have a million earworms going on. So
Uh, you do, actually. And by the way, if you look for it on Amazon, there's a book underneath it that's not in the same genre as my business mentoring book based on Slack. So
Oh, oh, Yogi's in C.
just saying,
Yogi's in the
um,
naughty category.
I was number one in that category. Um, you asked for the conditions, and I go back to those two things, Betsy. There has to be the trust. If I'm going to give you feedback that's going to sting, you need to know that I'm doing it for all the right reasons, and
Yeah.
I need to know you're going to take it for all the right reasons. Bottom line, trust is the foundation. Anything else, you're building it on a foundation of sand, right there. And honestly, I think that's one of the reasons why. Another reasons why I wrote the book is I fear for the future of mentorship. I think we've become too soft. We've become too sensitized. We want to bubble wrap everything and not destroy somebody's psyche, and tough feedback these days is taken as an attack. So people just don't want to engage anymore because they don't want to get lashed at because you're providing feedback, or they're afraid to open up their vulnerable doors and let people in. So, God bless people like Brene Brown working on that, because I think that could literally sever all this great stuff that we talk about mentorship. If we can't get past our own ego and ability to receive tough feedback, we're only going to grow so much as a species.
Well, we're in a culture now where anytime you say anything, it's like, "Oh, you're toxic," "You're narcissistic," or, like, if it like, so then it's like if you're a mentor, you're on eggshells because it's like, "Oh, well, I don't want you to feel this way." But I do think that if you set up the conditions, up front, like, I'll tell people, like, now in all of my partnership setups with my initial clients, it's like, I just need to be clear. Always will have your best interest, and I'll let you know when I get especially animated. It's not going to be around just my best practices. I'm going to be animated around my worst practices, the things that cost me tons of money. And so you don't have to do anything with it, but I just ask that you try it on. And I'll say this, like, like my kids, I tell my kids, like, you can make your own mistakes, just don't make mine. And I think it's like sometimes you could set the conditions of saying, "I will be raising difficult issues." That's the other thing as I always ask for. I will be raising difficult issues. I will have an independent point of view, and this is part of the partnership. And you set it up when you're at the beginning so that when you're in the tough moments, you could say,
Mhm.
"Remember,
Yeah.
remember when I asked you this, and like, remember I asked for this permission. Now let's talk about that part." But it's hard because then people get litigious if you have to have your professional liability because it's like, well, you're just supposed to be my cheerleader all the time.
Mm. No, and I love setting expectations right up front and letting you know, look, this is, that's why I lead with there's no fluff, man. It's sandpaper learning. Your sea captains don't learn how to sail on smooth waters. Let's make it
Right.
rough, right? And because you're going to come out more refined and polished afterwards, and I love that. So there's no surprises. You're setting expectations early.
So what is a mentee? Okay, so I want to finish on the so if you're moving into the mentor role, you have to set the expectations, set the conditions, be in that best interest and build that trust. But let's talk about the mentee and what they need to do to show up to be a good mentee, to make it really worth somebody else's, life wisdom. What are they supposed to do?
So I use the analogy of climbing a mountain, right? Your mentor is going to be up there ensuring the ropes don't get tangled, to make sure that your path is clear, but they're not going to pull you to the top of the mountain. You got to climb, right? And and their job is to ensure that all of the ancillary things around you are working right, and that you're seeing things clearly, that there are appropriate safety nets. Sometimes you need to stumble a little bit, but there's appropriate safety nets. But you gotta do a lion's share of the work, to go back to Simba, and climb that mountain, right? Nobody's chasing you down. Nobody cares, as we said, nobody cares more about your career than you do.
Yeah.
And if you're not bringing the energy, don't expect the mentors to be a mirror. I will tell my mentors, "Hey, I'm here for you. You call me, I got you, but I'm not chasing you down. You have to own this relationship. You have to own what you get out of it." If a mentor goes in with precognitive understandings and predestination feelings, I mean, they know what the potential is, but they can't set the goal. They can set the general direction, but not the destination. So, that's, I talk about things, and maybe this was maybe a follow-up question, but there are things that mentors can do that screw things up. They take too much ownership. They try to be a savior.
Mhm.
They try to have the answer for everything. Those are the things that will just derail a mentor relationship. So, mentees, bottom line, you gotta own it, baby. Gotta own it.
Yep. Yeah, like Chris King used to always say, going back to other mentors, is we don't work harder than our clients. Like they have to bring the energy, and I think that that is part of that setting expectation is you have to reach out to me. This is what's available. You have to bring the energy, and I will get you to where you want to go, but you have to go there. And I like your
Yeah,
example of going
100%.
up the
And there was a phrase that I learned early at Disney, and I talk about this in the book. It's, you can be responsible to people, but not for people.
right.
And as a consultant, if you're going to be responsible for your client's actions, that is a recipe for disaster, right? And you can be responsible to them, deliver what you're supposed to deliver in a genuine fashion of interest and development, but the line draws right there.
Yeah, you have to understand what your monkeys and circuses are and what their monkey and circuses are.
100%. Yeah.
Going back to the animals, we have an animal theme going on here, but
Pet eyes, animals, love
yeah,
it.
but not the day of the animals, as I revealed to you my childhood trauma. Speaking of Star Wars, we were talking beforehand that when I was little and Star Wars just came out, there was like 2 movies at the theater, and Star Wars is one, and The Day of the Animals was in another, and my mother thought Star Wars would be too scary, so she took me to Day of the Animals. It was terrifying, and I was still freaked out by birds, you know? But anyway, so
Well,
let's talk about
if you told that today, people would be the young kids would be like, "You went to the theater and there were only 2 screens? What?"
I know, right? I know, right? And or they might even ask, like, "You went to the movies? Like, why wouldn't you just stream it?" Like, "What is that all about?"
Next
Like,
time
why
on Gen X Stories.
wait till they hear about how you had to wait until, like, somebody called you and this little thing would ring, and then you'd answer and you'd say, "Hello?" And then you'd talk to the person on the other side, you know? And and they didn't send you a message first saying, "Is now a good time?" They would just interrupt you, it didn't matter what you were doing, you know?
Your mobile line was a cord long enough to go to the top of the stairs and close the door behind you as the
Exactly.
choreographed to the kitchen, right?
And your join call is when you realize, like, there's because we had 2 phone lines, and if I could just, like, push the little button between it and I just hold it just like this, I can get, like, both my friends to talk at the same time. That's Gen X was a lot more fun.
Oh god, we're hysterical. Best generation ever, right here.
I know, right? We had the best music. We had the worst clothes, but the best music,
No,
right?
amen. Amen. Amen.
On both parts. Our clothes was unfortunate. I can't really justify the acid wash or the parachute pants with the
Pants.
leggings. I cannot justify that. There's no excuse.
A
I'm
lot of
so sorry.
marigolds and browns and forest greens in the late '70s, so yeah.
And I really cannot ever find a justification for the mullet, or the bi-level haircut. Like, I'm
Did you have
just
the Camaro hair where it where it
oh,
it
like
stuck up like
the bangs? No, I
yes.
didn't have like that part. The bangs that would be like oh, and then the perm face. That's another whole thing. Anyway, we have to talk about mentoring. Sorry. We digress from this into our Gen Xy world. Okay, so let's talk about consultants and coaches who want to get a mentor. Why would somebody choose to look for a mentor rather than a coach or rather than somebody else? Like what would be the benefit for a consultant or coach to seek out a mentor versus like a business coach?
Like you talked about Rafiki, somebody on the outside that sees your blind spots. We never are able to see all of our blind spots at one time. And, getting somebody to be able to take that third party look at you and what you're doing and your messaging and your websites and your marketing is always a plus. Always an opportunity to get better. You talk about the Odyssey. Socrates said, the wise man is the one that knows he knows nothing. And if you are a mentor or a consultant, no matter how skilled, talented, experienced you are, there's more juice in that lemon to squeeze, and sometimes that mentor is going to give you perspectives that you didn't even consider before. So if there's an interest, if there's an interest in being better and doing more and being more, find a mentor. Find a professional relationship coach like Betsy, or, like I did. I joined an organization of OD professionals, and they had a mentorship program within it. And I not only found an amazing mentor to help me write a book and be a consultant, but he's a dear friend that, we built out of that relationship. So I think ultimately, Betsy, it's got to come from in here. It's got to come from what you want and what you're able to see where your opportunities are. If you don't have anything to prove, God bless you. Good luck. But
And I
if
think
you do, then there are people out there, as we talked about earlier, that are very willing to give back, and help you out.
one thing that I think a lot of us have a problem with is like professional helpers. And the people who are always giving the advice is like, I should already know how to do this. Like that myth or that shame that it's like, why don't I understand how to do this? How would you help somebody overcome that I should already know how to do this myth and find the right support from somebody who's been where they want to go and could show them how to get to where they want to get to go faster, but they still have this like, why don't I know how to do this? I give advice all day long. I help other people grow businesses. I'm a coach, or I could do this.
Physician, heal thyself.
That's a
Um,
good answer.
you know,
So
I,
good.
I've literally said that to myself. I don't know if it was in my head, my inner voice, my guardian angel go, Jesus, you tell everybody how to do this. Why can't you figure it out yourself? Well, you're dealing with a lot of other layers that you don't have to deal with on the outside. So, it's one of those things that because we do it for other people, this is me personally, is my life for the last 30 years has been dedicated to helping other people grow and develop. The last person I thought about was me. So
Mhm.
sometimes it's not a, and I'm going to use this in a very definitive word, ignorance. You have lack of knowledge of something. That's why you're ignorant of it. But you've spent your life investing in others. And sometimes to make that leap from focusing 100% on putting other people's needs ahead of your own, to start focusing on your own, that is an uncomfortable, sometimes scary and alien journey. And having somebody walk with you during that, especially somebody that's been through that exact same journey, where they had to come up with those own personal observations and understanding about the new realities they live in, essential. Essential. You don't fail at anything you don't know how to do it. Think
Mhm.
about that, right? And so if you are learning something new, you're ignorant. I'm gonna say that. I was ignorant going in the consulting world. There were things that I didn't know. So you can't fail at anything you don't know how to do. Now, if you spend a year and a half working with a coach and you still don't know how to do it, that's a whole other conversation. But
Yeah.
the fear that you have on how you would be viewed, that's all up here. That's all the block that you create yourself. So, you know, it's funny, Betsy, when I had to work with people that are in service business like us, or that have been in the hospitality world, and I start talking about their personal development. They go, "Well, I want to be a better leader because I want to help my team, or I want to do this." And I said, "Stop." I said, "You realize everything that you've created for you on your development plan was literally for the benefit of other people. You can't take 5 minutes and think about how to better yourself because you want it." I
Right.
literally had to give these leaders permission to think about themselves. And you're so conditioned, you're so focused on that goal of hospitality and consulting that you don't give yourself a second thought. And sometimes that mentor is going to give you that permission.
And I think the mentor's also gonna normalize some things for you, is that the reality is if you're a growth-oriented person, you're gonna always hit the edge of what your competence level is, and then there's this unknown to get to this next level. And I think that's where the mentors shine, is they step in because they know how to they have the maps through the unknown. They can get you to that next level, but you need to go to that next level for yourself, and then others will benefit. But the hero goes on the journey to get this boon and this insight that they bring back to others, but they learn it for themselves first. It's an embodied learning rather than an external, like, I want to learn how to do this. And I think that that's a really important perspective shift that I'm really grateful that you provided.
Well, I know you
But
didn't bring up Phil as a mentor. That's a whole other conversation in Hercules, by the way. He has a other complete journey too. Um,
oh yeah, we should do a whole episode on the mentors and the Disney thing. Do you have a podcast? We'll do it on your show next.
I that was brought up when with another podcast host that focuses on Disney, but and she brought up she brought up Phil, but I like the idea of digging into that because there are archetypes all over the place that we can find and have fun with.
Okay. So stay tuned for a future episode with Yogi and I, where we are going to analyze the Disney annals for the role of the mentor in all of the different movies and the archetypes that they represent, good, bad, or what have you.
Bring it on.
So stay tuned. We're going to have that show. Okay. So how could people get your book and and connect with you?
My book is available. Ebook is available on all outlets. You can get the paperback on Amazon.com. You can also find the link at craftleadership.net, and which is my home website. And then I'd love to have you reach out to me on LinkedIn. Love to stay connected.
Awesome. And if they want your help of like instituting more mentorship into organizations, like, is there other things that you can provide them kind of behind the scenes as they're doing their consulting and coaching work and wanting to move into that mentoring space?
Well, it's funny. A lot of the work that I've done recently has been about how do I write a book. So I've kind of moved into a little bit of a new area there. So, whether you're looking for your personal work, we can bring in the grit index, the framework there to work with. We could work with your organization. We could work with your talent landscape, your ecosystem, to ensure that you have a cradle to grave type of process in your organization to ensure your talent is kept, developed, and ready to have you grow in your next business success that you want to have. So, looking forward to chatting with anybody. Give me a shout.
Awesome. Well, that's awesome. Thank you. And thank you so much for being on the show. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And for all of you, if you enjoyed this conversation, please, rate and review it, subscribe to the show so more people find it. My take on this whole idea around the mentorship is that this is our role for us to step into. Like, I think this is the ultimate real purpose of consultants and coaches. I don't think that we're just supposed to be paid listening ears, or just experts with all the answers. I think that we are supposed to play this role. So if you're needing help to position yourself more as the mentor on your client's transformation journey, I'd love to work with you. You can check out what I do on my website. And I think that's it for now. Thanks so much for listening, everyone.
It's been a magical journey, Betsy. Thank you so much.
It's been magical. It really has. Thank you so much.